So I was born in Mogadishu, Somalia, and I fled when I was 9 years old to escape civil war. I grew up in America, Columbus, Ohio, trained to be a lawyer and had my life planned out ahead of me. But I always felt this pull back home to see the country of my birth. And 12 years ago, I went back for the first time. And what I saw really shocked me. The streets where I used to play football were rubble. I saw young people standing on street corners with nothing to do. Childhood friends who never left, living in tin shacks. I returned to a country that had been devastated by 30 years of civil war. But I also saw something else, enormous potential. Young people with extraordinary resilience, surviving impossible circumstances. And I thought to myself, I can help. I can help rebuild Somalia by giving these young people the economic opportunities that they desperately needed. So I started a jobs program, skills training, microfinance, entrepreneurship. We started one of the largest workforce development programs in the country. And we worked with thousands of young people across Somalia. The logic was very simple. Give young people economic opportunity, and they won't join armed groups. They won't flee the country. They'll stay and actually rebuild their country. I was wrong. Youth kept dropping out of our classes. Businesses they started would fail. They did not stay in the jobs we actually gave them. And those who did stay used their savings to illegally migrate and pay smugglers to go to countries that could provide them better livelihoods. I couldn't understand it. So one day I sat down with a young man who was about to be dropped off out of one of our classes. His name was Liban. And I asked him the most important question I can think of. Why? Why are you giving up? Why aren't you showing up? And he told me his uncle, who raised him from birth, had been killed in a checkpoint a few months before. His family lived in a refugee camp outside of Mogadishu. And every day, Liban traveled 2 hours to get to our to our training center through security checkpoints that reminded him of his uncle's death. And at that point, I thought to myself, how can I demand his attention? How can I ask him to focus on financial forecasting when he's trying to process deep-seated trauma? When every day he's just focused on surviving until the next day. And Liban wasn't alone. We studied our students across the country, and we found over 30% had clinical signs of PTSD, levels you'll see in soldiers returning from combat. 70% were suffering from anxiety disorders, nightmares, panic attacks, paralyzing fear. They'd seen bombings destroy their neighborhoods, watched family members killed, survived famine and displacement. And they lived in constant fear of losing everything at any moment. And I realized we didn't have an economic opportunity problem or a skills problem. We had a trauma problem. So we were faced with an important question. How do you create belonging in a country where the entire population has only known violence, where people have learned to protect themselves instead of trusting each other, or even trusting in the opportunities that I'm trying to give them? And until a few years ago, I thought I understood the impact of trauma until one of our clinicians told me something very important. Trauma damages the part of our brain that allows us to imagine. It actually shrinks it. And I want you to think about that for a moment. To plan for the future, you must first be able to picture it, to imagine it. To see yourself running that business a year from now, you're using your imagination. To picture yourself belonging to something larger, a community, a purpose, a future worth building toward, you're using your imagination. And when trauma damages that capacity, you can't plan, you can't connect, so you give up. Liban couldn't imagine a future beyond surviving the checkpoints each day. He couldn't imagine belonging to anything beyond his grief. Young people in Somalia join terrorist organizations because they can't imagine a different path. They flee the country because they could not imagine belonging in it. So you see, we weren't just fighting poverty or a lack of skills. We were fighting a failure of imagination, a failure of collective imagination. So we completely changed everything. we redesigned our entire program. We made mental health foundational to every single thing that we do. So one of the first group of students that was in our new program was a young man named Hassan, a former child soldier. When he first came to us, he couldn't make eye contact. His hands shook in rooms with other people. So we didn't start with job training. We started with healing circles. 8 young men, 1 counselor, sitting together once a week. The counselor taught them to name what they felt, to recognize when trauma was making their decisions, to sit with the panic instead of running away from it. For weeks, Hassan barely spoke. Then another young man shared his story, and Hassan opened up about being forcefully recruited, about his first night as a soldier. And here's what we learned. You cannot restore imagination alone. Imagination is inherently social. We imagine futures with people, not just for ourselves. In that circle, Hassan found space to belong, to trust, to believe he could be something beyond survival. His hands stopped shaking. He could picture himself a year from now running a business. So we trained him in brick making, and we helped him heal, and we gave him a loan to start up a business. And Hassan did something we didn't really expect. He went back to the compounds where young fighters were still trapped. Over the course of a year, he helped 67 of them defect from the terrorist organization. 67. He helped those 67 defect because he was living proof that you could belong to something beyond violence. And we didn't stop with Hassan. We scaled this model across the country in mechanic shops, in schools, in local businesses. Healing went hand in hand with economic opportunity. And we reached over 300,000 community members across Somalia. And initially, I thought the change was going to be around mental health. We saw a decrease in anxiety and depression. But something extraordinary happened. 98% of young people stayed in their jobs after 1 year. Before trauma healing, that was 60%. And this is what really stunned me the most. Not a single person who went through trauma healing illegally migrated. Not a single one. And that's what happens when you rebuild the capacity to imagine. So over the past 10 years, we've achieved these results in spaces that were never really designed for healing, buildings scarred by war, rooms that were built for function, not really for safety or care. So a few years ago, we partnered with Mass Design to answer a simple question. Could a building heal a community? Could architecture create the conditions for communities to restore what trauma has torn apart? Our answer was the Peace Hub, Somalia's first center designed for collective healing, where young people heal together in circles, learn trades together, in rooms designed for collaboration, where architecture itself says, you belong here. Your future is being built here. You're ready to build it with you. And then our funding was cut when USAID was shut down. And I've come to understand that the crisis of imagination isn't just in Somalia. It's anywhere people, leaders, communities, and institutions can't see beyond the immediate to imagine the future. So today I'm asking you to imagine a future where healing goes hand in hand with economic opportunity. I want you to imagine a future where a building can heal a community from trauma. I want you to join me in imagining a future where this center actually exists. Because over the years, I've realized I'm not in the business of entrepreneurship or skills building or even mental health. I'm in the business of repairing imagination, helping young people imagine better futures and partnering with them to make it a reality. Because when you repair imagination, you restore belonging. And when people belong to something larger than survival, they don't just transform themselves, they build with everyone around them. When millions build together, that's how we create the abundance young people deserve. So join me today. Let's use our collective imagination to imagine a better future. Thank you so much.